Hello, and welcome to Draft Day. My name is John Fleming. I'm one of the hosts of Draft Day. Another one of the hosts of Draft Day is a person by the name of Jason Bradshaw, who is here, as it turns out. Jason, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm here. If I'm gonna be honest, I am tired, but
You
this
are
gives me
here,
life.
yes, and you were saying before we started that you're feeling a little bit under the weather. Hopefully, you're feeling less under the weather than Chip Care's been the last couple days for Cardinals broadcasts, and you're not going to
I,
just make everybody feel sad.
I do have the ability to speak, so we have that going for us.
Yeah. And so we are recording this on opening day for the Cardinals home opener. They won their home opener, so that's exciting. We're not doing a baseball draft, but I feel like because of the types of people we are, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that opening day was going
I
on.
mean,
And
they're 500 against the odds, man. So
yeah, they're 4-4, and five of their games have been against playoff teams. It's so weird that Miami was in the playoffs last year, but they were. And yeah, so
and Miami has the same number of wins that me and you have.
that is
So
true. So the thing about and I promise we're gonna get our actual draft. It's a hockey draft today, but as I'm sure people who looked at the title understood. But I want to start off before we get into the hockey of it all with a little trivia that has to do with baseball. I also have some trivia that vaguely has to do with hockey, but we'll do baseball first because that's a better transition from the way I started. Okay,
yeah,
so here is, and I'm realizing now I did not set this up quite the way I wanted to, so I'm going to kind of vamp a little bit as I type things out. But what we're going to do is, so the Cardinals, as I mentioned, they played the Miami Marlins, which was a big day for everybody involved. I am not doing a very good job of vamping, but this was a reunion between the St. Louis Cardinals and a player that I know is near and dear to your heart, Mr. Jared Schumacher, aka Skip Schumacher, aka the manager of the Miami Marlins, who was at one point your favorite player on the Cardinals.
I still
At
have
one,
the jersey.
yeah, at one point my favorite player on the Cardinals was like maybe slightly better than Skip Schumacher, but not exactly like picking an obvious candidate in Miami Marlins first base coach John Jay. And
Oh man,
today also marked several returns of uh, great kind of semi competent Cardinals of yore. We had Daniel Descalzo, who's the bench coach for the Cardinals now. We had Matt Carpenter and Lance Lynn, who were both brought back into the fold as full on actual members of the St. Louis Cardinals. And then we have I guess LaRusso was there too, so that counts for something. But the reason
and
that
Jake Berger, St. Louis's own.
I mean, Jake Berger is old enough that he was probably watching the game, right? Like he's not.
He's
Like you'd have to be,
27.
yeah, like you'd have to be like. So Jackson Chourio is the youngest player in the majors right now, and he was born in March of 2004. Which, God, that's depressing. I mean, he would have been 7, which I would guess he probably wasn't watching the game because he wasn't like in St. Louis. But it's not impossible. You know, Jordan Walker, for instance, not in St. Louis either, but he was 9, and it might have been past his bedtime. I'm not sure. I'm,
Yeah.
but regardless, the reason that I'm bringing this up, 2011 World Series basic reunion, and so the 2011 Cardinals are not the best Cardinals team of our lifetime or of our time as fans, but they are a team that won the World Series, which is very exciting. They participated in the best game I ever saw in Game 6 of the World Series. And I have a little question about that team. So,
All
if
right.
you had a guess, and this is not actually part of the trick question, but if you had a guess, how many players do you think played at all in the regular season for the 2011 Cardinals? Insofar
Jeez.
as they faced a single batter as a pitcher, and or they took a single plate appearance as a player.
Jeez, okay. Probably, I don't know. I'd say somewhere between 40, 40 and 60. I don't know. I'll say you have a 40-man roster, I guess. I'll say 49.
Not a bad guess. 46 is this total.
Okay.
And what I have is a list of all of the players who played for the Cardinals that year.
Oh, goodness.
I'm not going to make you name all the players, but what I am going to do, I have the list sorted, and the reason that I was typing ferociously there is I'm making sure I could sort it correctly. Sorted in alphabetical order by last name.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
What we're going to do is we're going to go through the alphabet. And the rule is very simple. You name one player who had that last name that played for the 2011 Cardinals. You only need to get one. There are, however, some letters that there are no players. So if you want to say there are no players, you can guess that as well.
Oh,
Might be a helpful thing if you just can't think of any players too.
Okay.
All right. So
do I have to go in order, or are you just going to give me letters then?
I figured I would give you a letter, and then you could.
Okay.
So the first letter, and you of course know this because you have small children. I had to look this up because my small child is a dog who cannot read and probably will never read. Probably. The letter A. Can you name a player whose last name started with the letter A that played for the 2011 Cardinals?
Oh my gosh. A. So I don't think any of the positional starting 9 that's in my head have the last. And we're going last name starts with A, right?
Correct.
Okay. So Arthur Rhodes isn't going to count.
Okay. That is correct.
But he was on that team, I'm pretty sure. Can I pass and reserve the right to come back to the letter A?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Letter B.
Lance Berkman.
Yep. Also would have accepted Miguel Batista, Mitchell Boggs, or Andrew Brown.
Oh, of course, Andrew Brown. How could I forget him?
Yeah, kind of the Ringo of that group. I say as though Miguel Batista exactly covered himself in glory as a Cardinal. Letter C.
Yeah. Okay. There's a few easy ones I could do, but I'm going to go with one of my favorite guys because I just love the scrappy guys. So I'm going to go Adron Chambers.
Yes, with 8 plate appearances that season, but one huge run to win him late in the season.
And he had a run scored in, was it game 6, maybe? I think he pinch ran, maybe?
He's not on the postseason roster. He had a few big pinch running moments during
2012 postseason, maybe?
During September call-up. My dog's currently barking because he's very upset that he not going to watch the game.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking 20. I think what runs in the playoffs with Chambers, I'm thinking of, I believe, was in that 2012 DS
I think you're
Game
right.
5. I think he scored.
I think he actually scored one of the big runs in the Nationals in Game 5.
Yeah, in Game 5, a game in which we watched that game at my parents' home, I believe. And one of our friends woke up my mom when Pete Cosmo took the lead.
One of our more soft-spoken friends at that.
This is true, but all right, let's keep going. Or I don't know if you want to say any of the other C's. Tony freaking Mind, another one I could have said.
Yeah,
but
we have a couple Carpenters, Michael Clado, Alan Craig, and Tony freaking Mind, Tony Cruz. Carpenters being Chris and Matt, who obviously Matt did not play very much for that team. He had 19 play appearances, but still counts.
Yeah, still there.
On to D.
I could cheat and be like, you already said this, Gal, but I will go with Ryan Braun's daddy in that postseason, if you remember, and that was Octavio Dotel.
To be clear, I would have accepted Daniel Descalzo. Brandon Dixon also would have counted, though.
Oh, gosh. How many games did he pitch in? I
don't know how many games I don't have that up. I do have that he 37 batters faced.
Okay.
Letter E.
You know what? I'm gonna go out on a limb because E is a weird thing for last name. We didn't have an Encarnacion or anything like. Juan Encarnacion was gone by then, obviously. I'm gonna say there was no E.
That is correct.
Let's go.
Letter F.
I'll cop out David Freeze.
That works. Ryan Franklin, Rafael Furcal
Okay.
also.
Oh yeah, Furcal's on the team. Big part of that team.
Yeah, it was a starter for the. Okay, letter G.
Oh, a pitcher who overall just disappointed me in this Cardinal time, Jaime Garcia.
I'm much pro Jaime Garcia than you are, but he's correct.
I wanted him to be so much more.
It wasn't bad, but yeah, he definitely like. There was a moment where I was like, "Oh, he's like Kershaw," and he was not Kershaw, but had a decent little career. Very handsome man too.
Very, very good looking though.
I think maybe the most handsome member of that team. I don't have a quick Rolodex, but that's my instinct is to say that. It's either him or the other G, Tyler Green.
Another good looking guy. And another guy that we had such high hopes for.
I did not have that high of hopes for him. He could never disappoint me. All right, letter H.
Matt Holliday.
Yep. Other one would have been Mark Hamilton.
Oh yeah.
On to I. The vowels have been the ones tripping you up so far because
yeah, it's like like
skipped A and then
yeah, I'm trying to think of. See, it's like I'm trying to just like even think of like last names that begin with I in general, and like the first thing that popped in my head was the final out of the 2006 World Series, Brandon Inge.
But did he play for the 2011 Cardinals?
He did not, decidedly. Shoot. So I've got a decent like the postseason roster like is pretty well in my head, and so I'll say there's no eyes.
That is correct.
Oh, let's go, baby!
All right, letter J.
The first Supreme Court Chief Justice of the United States, John Jay.
That is correct. Edwin Jackson also would have worked.
Mr. No Hitter.
Two guys that had very strange appearances in Game 6 of the World Series. Edwin Jackson came in as a pinch hitter and was pulled before he ever saw a pitch. And John Jay was benched to start the game in favor of Skip Schumacher because he was having an awful series. But then came in at a big hit against the lefty. So
it all came together nicely.
All comes around. Letter K.
I mean, the 2012 hero himself. A man that I have an autographed photo of somewhere in this house, and that is Pete Cosmo.
He is the only one, but that's all you needed.
Hey.
Letter L.
Oh. You know what? I'm going to go with my favorite one. I think I can think of at least three guys, but I'm going to go with Gerald Laird.
So your favorite's the worst of the three. Got it. Okay. That is
I mean, Loesch was my first thought, other than Lynn, who we obviously had already talked about. Those are the three I thought of. I don't know if there's any more. But.
Yeah, Loesch was definitely the most prominent at the time. Lynn became more prominent, but for the 2011 team. And then Laird jumped really high whenever Game 6 was won.
The Game 6, like that's his crowning moment as a Cardinal. I feel like
it absolutely is.
Yeah.
Also, just being one of the most god-awful pitch framers in the history of baseball, but
he's a guy whose body like gave me hope that I could be a major league catcher a little bit. Like him and Benji Molina, man. Just
he's like a rich man's Ryan Domit on the pitch framing, but
boy, that's a reference.
Yeah. Letter M.
Let's go to a guy I ran into one time out in St. Louis. I forget where I was. I think it might have been the grocery store. But Kyle McClellan.
Kyle McClellan is correct. A native St. Louis and somebody that I've interviewed before.
Yeah. I guess like Molina would have been a really easy one to go with there. Or the closer of the team.
Or Molina, yeah, Yadier Molina or Jason Mott. I apologize for my dog firmly being on one right now. See if I can switch rooms, see if that'll help. But the other M would have been Trevor Miller, who was bad. and got traded because they were going to cut him otherwise. Next up is the letter N. For those keeping track of the alphabet.
N. Oh my gosh. N. There's gotta be an N. That's a free letter in the final round of Wheel of Fortune. There's gotta be an N in here that I'm just missing.
We can come back to it if you'd like. If you're
Let's
totally
come back.
thinking.
I'm not. Yeah.
All right.
I don't want to kill too much time. Oh, you know what? I'm not even going to think on this one. I'm just going to say there are none because apparently there's no vowels on this team.
I cannot confirm nor deny the no vowel thing, but for O, it's correct that there are none.
Okay. Then I will take it.
Letter P. I'm positive you have one in mind, but I'm just wondering which one you're going to go
Yeah.
with.
I'm definitely. I mean, the obvious one popped ahead. I'm going to go with the guy, and it all comes back to Skip Schumacher. I'll tell this short story on here. When the Cardinals made the big trade in 2011, which Colby Rasmus was traded, I went to the game with one of our friends, and he had a Colby Rasmus shirt to which, over the name Rasmus, he put tape over it and wrote "Run Out of Town" on it. We ended up sitting close to the press boxes that night at the game, and I believe it was Derek Gould who took a photo of it and tweeted it. So you have my friend who has his "Run Out of Town" shirt and me sitting next to him in my Schumacher jersey. Well, this gets picked up by, I think it was NBC's
NBC, yeah.
whatever their sports thing was, and it became their photo of the day. And the top comment on there was, "Look at his boy rocking the Schumacher jersey." And the first comment underneath that was, "Yeah, the team store must have been all out of Punto shirts." So I will go with Nick Punto as a very roundabout way to get to that.
That'll work. There was also Corey Patterson, and I think that's it. I don't think there were any other P's.
Jose somebody, right?
Jose, Jose something, yeah. I'm going to go ahead and just leave that one out there because anybody who doesn't know that one probably isn't listening to this show. So
yeah, and the fact of the matter is, if anybody thinks I'm being rude, that is his actual first name, I believe.
It is.
So suck it.
Next up is Q.
There's no Q's.
Are you sure Rasmus isn't Q?
Yes.
Got him. You're correct, but I thought of that one like halfway down the list, and I was very excited.
That's pretty good.
Speaking of references I just made, R.
I won't use the one because I obviously mentioned him as well. But I will go for a guy whose name doesn't sound like it starts with this letter, and he was in the trade for Colby Rasmus. I will take Scrabble himself, Mark Zepchinski.
That's correct. Could have gone with Colby Rasmus, Arthur Rhodes, or Shane Robinson, who made 8 plate appearances.
Sugar Shane from Florida State.
Yeah. S.
I mean, Skip is an obvious one I can say, but I will give a shout out to a guy that I had. I think I remember his first name, but that I had such high hopes for with the Northern.
Everyone had high hopes for this guy.
Eduardo Sanchez. Oh, goodness. Fernando Salas, I believe, also on that team.
Yep.
Who was like Jekyll and Hyde in his time in St. Louis. But
yeah. So it was Salas, and then Sanchez and Schumacher. And that is it. All right,
wow,
T.
only 3 S's. T. T. Oh, shoot.
Let's skip it.
You know what? I'll go out on a limb just because I can't think right now. No T's.
That is incorrect. There are two T's. The less famous of the T's was Brian Tallet, and
I
the
barely
more
remember
notable
him.
the more notable T would have been Ryan Terrio.
Oh, the Riot, of course. He had a decent part in that Game 6, right? Like,
He participated in it.
yeah, it's more than I did.
Next letter up is U.
Well, dude, sticking with the vowels, no use.
That is correct.
Let's go.
All right, V.
V. Oh. Say Fernando Vina was just a little bit gone by this time. Do we have a Vargas or Vega? Or... no. I think it's so many for the next letter, but V. No V's.
You're saying no V's?
No V's.
With 27 batters faced, Raul Valdez is the only V. That was not an easy one.
I don't feel bad about missing that one. But Terrio, that's fairly inexcusable.
A bit of a difference here.
Yeah.
Next up is W.
I mean, take your pick here. I'll go Jake Westbrook.
Yeah, that'll work. There's only one other W, actually. It's PJ Walters. Good. Yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say there's no X, Y, or Z before you say it.
That is correct.
Let's go. There was no Young, and that was like the only Y. There was a Young on the other team in the 2011 World Series.
That's true. But let's see. So there's two letters you skipped, which were
A and N, right?
And N. Yes.
So, okay, I'm not going to lie. I came up with an N or an A. Sorry, not an N. When I was thinking through, I'm going to be really impressed with myself if he was on this team. But was pitcher Brian Augenstein a member of the 2011 St. Louis Cardinals?
With 32 batters faced, he is the only A. You got it.
Let's freaking go.
The only vowel last name on the entire team.
I just remember him I get so frustrated because I felt like I had to enunciate his name so perfectly because it wasn't Augustine. It was Augenstein. But
honestly, if you had said Augustine, I would have given it to you. It's not a pronunciation test.
Hey, it's an N. Shoot.
The letter N.
N. Let's think here, Jason. Just so people don't have to sit and listen to me grunt and think. No N's. I don't know.
No N's is correct.
Really? That's just
no. So yeah.
No Eduardo Nunez on the 2011 Cardinals.
That would be accurate. Yes.
Yeah, I guess so. Shoot. Wow.
So
okay.
24 out of 26. I didn't really decide what was a passing score, so we'll say you got there. Congratulations.
That's an A. That's an A.
Yeah. 12 out of 13 is an A. All right. So the next bit of trivia I have is a little bit more directly connected to the draft that we're about to do, which is the 1988 NHL Draft.
Loaded.
Yeah, it is a very good draft, and so this is the first draft we've done that neither of us was alive for the draft itself. But I don't know about you, but I very much came of age as a hockey fan, during these guys' primes. I vividly remember a lot of these guys.
Yeah, and these were the guys that you pretended to be out in the driveway playing roller hockey or shooting at your net or whatever. This was.
Well, these were NHL video game icons, and
one of them in the movie The Mighty Ducks, a movie that I've seen hundreds of times probably as well. that maybe the guy taken first overall. But
one of the guys referenced is referenced in the movie Swingers too, for his NHL video game acumen.
Mm-hmm.
We may
wow.
we may get to that.
I feel like that's like the most epitome of us ever, where I bring up the Mighty Ducks and you bring up Swingers. Not saying lifestyle choices, just more what we've watched. But
I've watched the Mighty Ducks.
I mean, I would hope so. But
all right, so
so what are we doing?
What stands out to me though is that like these guys are like integral to our lives and like as fans. 1988 just feel like anything that happened like even like slightly before I was born feels like it's like ancient history. Like as far as I'm concerned, like 1996 feels like it wasn't that long ago. 1982 was the same amount of years back from my birth year. Seems like it might as well be in the Stone Age.
Yeah.
So what I did was just to get us in the mindset of what it was like on June 11th, 1988 in Montreal, Quebec. Well, not actually in Montreal, Quebec, because these are based on American criteria. We're going to play a little game that I'm going to call 10 questions.
Okay.
It's like 20 questions, but it's half as long.
Hey, that's a clever name then.
The first part, I want you to guess. I'm not going to make you do song title, but I'm going to make you do artist. Who is the artist who had the #1 song in the country when this draft took place? I will let you do yes or no questions, and I will let you do things that are like moderately subjective, but you're going to have to just sort of take my word for it on those.
Okay. Is this artist a group?
No.
Is this artist a female?
No.
Would their main genre of music be classified as rock?
No.
Main genre of music, pop?
Yes.
Was this person who's an artist ever a member of a group?
Yes.
Is this man American?
No.
All right, how many questions is that?
You're at 6 questions.
Is this song? I'm going to go ask about the song, even though I know I'm trying to guess the artist.
Sure.
Is this song one that is still fairly well known and played on stations that play music from the 80s today?
I would say no.
Okay. Does this person have other songs that have stood the test of time that get played on those types of stations?
Yes.
Okay.
2 questions left, and the last question has to be a guess. So
okay.
You can, if you have 2 guesses, you can fire them off right now. But
is the artist George Michael?
The artist is George Michael, and the song is "One More Try."
Okay.
Which is a song I have never heard on the radio before, but
I don't know if I could pick that song. I am slightly impressed with myself that I was trying to think of male solo pop artists in the mid to late 80s, and there's just not many of them.
Yeah. So I listened to the song today, and I feel like I've heard it before, but it's definitely not a song that like stands out to me. It's like kind of a slow ballad.
Not like a Faith or Freedom of his kind of thing.
No, it was off the Faith album, but it was like the 5th single.
Well, that's why I was wondering. Like, I started. That's why I asked the question: is the song? Because I was thinking maybe the song was Faith. Because I mean that song's huge.
Sure.
But then I was like, do they have other songs? Okay. Like, I'll be honest, I got lucky. It was the first name I thought of, and I just kind of tailored my questions kind of around him, and it worked out. But
yeah, that worked for you.
I'll take it.
Next question. The #1 movie in the United States when this draft happened. You have 10 questions. This #1 grossing movie, to be clear.
Grossing movie, like of the weekend or whatever
Yes.
after this date. Okay. Is this film rated PG?
I don't know. I will have to look that up. One moment.
Okay.
You're asking if it is rated PG? Yes.
It is rated PG. Okay. Is this movie a comedy?
Yes.
Oh, shoot. All right. I mean, to be fair, this is like the heyday where like every other movie coming out was a comedy. Um, is the top billed actor in this movie male?
Yes.
Was this the opening weekend of this movie?
No. You're at 4 questions in.
This is just hard to ask questions about this. Like, I can think of movies from like that time in the 80s, but was this movie directed by a first-time director?
I am checking on that. Yes.
Is the director of this movie male?
Yes.
Okay, so that's 6.
Yes. That was a question towards your total.
Damn it. So that's
You're
7. Damn it, now another one.
You're at 6. Yeah. Really?
I forgot to make a guess. Man, shoot, I'm not gonna lie, that freaking first time director thing killed where my mind was at. So now it's like I know it's not the movie I had zeroed in on in my mind, which I'm pretty sure is from that year. And the other one I thought of that it could be is directed by a female. So, love you, Penny Marshall, but it's not you.
Kind of big.
Yes.
Okay.
That is from 1988.
This
I know
might
that. Shoot. Is the second billed actor in this movie a male?
No.
Okay, so we got maybe rom-com. Or okay, here, would you classify this as a romantic comedy?
No.
Okay, so it's just a straight comedy. Is this movie a sequel?
Yes. All right, you have 1 question left, so this is going to have to be your guess.
Oh, jeez. It's a sequel. Male and female.
I would say sequel is by far the most like deducing question you've asked so far. So
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't think to ask that sooner. So I'm thinking, because man, shoot, I would ask another question based on a movie I'm thinking of, and frankly, I don't remember what number came out this year.
well, if you want to take your guess right now and then like do extra questions just for your own
Yeah,
leisure.
is it Police Academy 4?
No.
Okay. It's not. It's not any of the police academies.
It's not. No.
Okay, because I think like 4, 5, 6, something came out. I don't remember.
Yeah. I will say I have never seen this movie. As far as the genre question, I have seen the original movie. As far as the genre questions, I just am going off what the Wikipedia.
Oh, is it freaking? Gosh, I can't think of the name of it. I don't know. Was the original directed by Tim Burton?
No.
Okay, because I think the Pee Wee's Big Adventure one was also was it Big Top Pee Wee? That's what I was.
I'm not sure, but yeah, it's not. It's not.
Shoot, I don't. Oh, Oh, don't tell me it's like the worst sequel of all time, John.
It has a
Just like,
Rotten Tomatoes score of 9%.
oh no, it's freaking, oh my God. It's Caddyshack 2, isn't it?
It is not Caddyshack 2.
Oh, that's about the right number for that. 9%?
From
Good
32
night.
reviews.
I'm not going to.
Let me give you the critics' consensus statement where I redact the name of the movie.
Okay.
Retelling its predecessor's same joke with diminishing returns, this movie sees the franchise's enjoyability go down under.
Oh gosh. Is there a third installment that Matthew Berry wrote on? Or whichever installment it was. Didn't Matthew Berry write on an installment of these movies?
Maybe? That sounds...
It's Crocodile Dundee 2,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yes, it's Crocodile Dundee 2.
Jesus.
Okay, yeah, I have not seen Crocodile Dundee 2, unfortunately. Or fortunately, based on the Rotten Tomatoes score.
Yeah, I think you're the fortunate there.
Honestly, I don't even really care for the original, so... And if that's the good one, it's kind of a bad...
Oh, yeah, that... Shoot. Because my original thing, when I was asking about the comedy, I was all like, oh, man, like, Twins is the first thing that entered my head. But when you said it was a first-time director, I'm like, okay, well, Ivan Reitman at least directed the Ghostbusters movies before this. So,
and afterwards, he drafted... What movie did he did Draft Day?
He did do Draft Day.
Yeah. His final movie.
Yeah.
The movie that we named our podcast after.
Which, be on the lookout for more content involving Draft Day. That'll be my tease. The film Draft Day.
Right. So I think we've probably gone on long enough.
Yeah, let's get to drafting.
So last week I referenced the 2003 NHL Draft as being like a really loaded draft. I would say this draft is slightly, and I mean slightly less deep, but it has way higher guys. Like 2003 draft has a lot of guys that are like, you could make Hall of Fame cases for them, but no one's gonna like be freaking out if you like. It has a lot of like Eric Stahl, Ryan Getzlaf, that kind of player who's like, yeah, I mean he wouldn't be the worst Hall of Famer, but he's not like
fringe guys, I'd say.
Yeah. There are a lot of Hall of Famers in this draft, and they are quite
like the
good.
top, like I can't remember maybe in any of our drafts, but like straight sports, like a clear cut, like I have had no problem with my top 8. Like they were like all really, really good. And then
I would say top 9 is probably where I draw the line as far as where there's a drop off. Not that there aren't good players after the top 9, but where there's
I mean a lot of it kind of drifted into like, and we'll talk about it more, but yeah, it was a like, even at the top though, like I think 1 is probably pretty clear, but like 2, 3, there's certainly an argument that, will get discussed by, I think, me who has that pick. But, it's it was a fun draft. And there's some names in here that like, I won't lie, like one guy who is on my list probably won't get drafted. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember his time with the Blues. And then like, I looked and it was an extremely short time. So the fact that he is like instilled in my brain member of the Blues is super weird. But
there's a guy who is outside of my top 20 and therefore might not get drafted, who I definitely remember him being a Blue and I definitely remember enjoying him. But and honestly in a lot of other drafts would probably be in the top 20, but in this case there's a lot of depth. But we played pool as we often do. I won this game of pool. Unlike the last game of pool, this one was not super close, but so I feel less bad. Number 1 overall pick, the 1988 NHL entry draft, drafted by the Winnipeg Jets. I'm going to take Teemu Selanne. He was drafted out of Finland. Is it Jokerit or Jokerit? I think
it's Jokerit. Jokerit. I don't.
Yeah. Leading goal scorer by a decent amount in this draft. Leader in point shares. Received Hart votes in 7 different seasons. 2-time first team All NHL, 2-time second team All NHL. had a rookie season where he scored over 70 goals. Played until after I was out of college, which is pretty so this is a guy who was drafted before you were born and retired after you had moved out of St. Louis. He had a long career and was really good. And was also
just think if he had stayed healthy like every year, like what his numbers could have been too. Like
he had 684 goals, 1457 points without staying healthy. But yeah, he was awesome and was honestly just like a beloved player too. Like I remember towards the end of his career, there were a lot of people like rooting for him to get a cup, and he already had a cup, so it wasn't like it was like a Ray Bork situation. It was hey, this guy deserves multiple cups, which is basically me doing the whenever the movie draft where I was just all about like, oh, we got to get like Scorsese an Oscar. Yeah, he has an Oscar, but we'll give him another one. I'm not gonna argue against that.
Yeah, I mean he's a guy that when you look at it, you said 684 goals. Weird, like he only had 773 assists in relation to his goals, so it's like, I guess, and when you think of, when we were growing up, Teemu Selanne and Paul Correa playing with the Ducks was like,
that was like the fun team too.
Yeah,
Granted, I'm not. Who was their third best forward at that point? I can't. I'm struggling to think of it.
Oh, jeez.
Like there was a big gap. Like they had
a
decent enough goalie, and then like Giguère a little bit later.
Yeah, on that team you maybe had. Was like he would like. I'm trying to think of who would have centered the line because they were both wingers, right? So like,
I feel like there was somebody, and I can't think of who it is. But
maybe like Steve Ruchin or something. Like
that just sounds right. Yeah,
somebody who
got basically like the equivalent of like Jonathan Chichu, the year that he had like a whole bunch of goals playing with Joe Thornton.
Yeah, or freaking Zach Hyman this year.
Here's the thing about Zach Hyman. He is a Toronto Maple Leafs legend. He is, or at least at one point was my wife's favorite player. Is it because his last name is Hyman? Who's to say, really? But
yeah, and never forget too that one random year on the Ducks, who also well out of his prime but played with him. Yari Curry played with him for a year.
Yari Curry is a fun player to use on like Immaculate Grid and like Puck Doku and like those grids for hockey because he played for a lot of teams. He's like an undisputed Hall of Famer, and yet he never really scores that high on percent. So you can pick if you pick like Ducks, Avalanche, Yari Curry, you're gonna get like 2% or something like that.
Yeah, it's Rangers, Avalanche. Like it's fantastic.
Some short stints.
Yeah.
All right, you're up.
All right. You want number 2? I think there's 2 guys to decide between at this pick, like I was alluding to. I'm going to take the guy, stick with the Ducks theme, who was in the Mighty Ducks. I will take the number 1 overall pick here at
Basil
number
McRae.
2.
Basil McRae.
Basil McRae said that Gordon Bombay used to rule in Pee-wees. So I remember thinking that because he was in that movie that Basil McRae was been like just as good as Mike Madonna, who I'm actually taking here.
The Sean Bradley and Space Jam problem.
Very true. And the Blue Alien was the best, but I digress. No, Mike Madonna. What's to say about this dude? Drafted number 1 overall in the draft. By the North Stars. So at the time, obviously went on to Dallas. Certainly in the conversation when you talk about all-time great U.S. born players, I feel like he's definitely a name who comes up.
I think especially with forwards, he's up there.
Agreed. And it's and part of it too, I think with him, obviously 561 goals, 813 assists, like speaks for himself, but like this is a kind of guy too, though. He wasn't I guess, much more of a product, like whereas like Solani was maybe ahead of his time in how he played some where he had the speed, he had some of the flair. Madonna, while incredibly skilled, was also just, a guy who big body would, knock your teeth out, get the dirty goal in front of the net kind of a thing. A thing that it's funny when you talk just in general, this is me going off on a soapbox tangent for a minute, when people get like angry now or like, oh, like if Keith Tkachuk played today, like people would dog him all the time for how he scores goals.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, frankly, as Blues fans, it's what Jake Neighbors has been this year. It's just a dude who just like cleans up right inside or right outside the blue paint.
Which is
they
like
don't count weird. The same. Who cares?
Also like that's skill. It's not like it's not like it's a pure matter of luck. Like if you want to say that you think 50 goals being scored right in front of the net is not as impressive as 50 goals scored like on crazy like Connor McDavid like crazy deep breakaways. I don't disagree with you, but it is still something.
Yeah, like 50, I think you have to put your effort
goals,
in there.
You're good, yeah.
Yeah,
if you score 50 goals, you're either really good or you're on a line with Joe Thornton, as we've established.
Yeah, and the crazy thing here too is that like I was like, oh, he had to have won some sort of trophy in his time.
No,
never won a thing. Made the all-rookie team, second in the Calder voting, so didn't win the Calder.
Made all NHL second team one time and never made first team. I mean, granted, center is like an impossible position to.
Yeah,
like,
it's tough.
He was competing with like Mario Lemieux a lot of those years.
Yeah,
Gretzky
I mean, and this is a guy though. He's got Hart votes. I want to say is 5, 6, 7 times, but also like a couple of times finishing top 5 in Selke voting. So I like my two-way forwards who can play defense. An interesting split too, and just kind of how his point shares break out for anyone that likes a little bit of the advanced statistics. I had it. Now it's gone. Hold on. There we go. Of his point shares, his total point shares is 144.9. But 34.4 of that is defensive point shares, which for a forward is, you're looking at 22 to 25%, probably somewhere in there. That's not bad for a guy of his caliber who had the offensive upside and everything too. A guy who, and a dude who was a star until his really awkward last year in Detroit. That seemed like the era where guys, were like ending in Detroit when like, Hull went up there. And
was he on the team the same time as Hull? Did they go together on the Dallas Detroit?
The 2010 Red Wings. Was Hull on that team?
I feel like that was actually later. Yeah. I think Hull actually was probably retired by then.
I would think so, because Hull was a rookie in 80s, maybe.
I think so. I think he briefly played for Calgary in the Monday Night Miracle. Not that game, but like that season.
That season, and then
a little bit.
Doesn't look like, I'm looking on Hockey Reference. It doesn't look like they were on that same team, but but that was the guy. It almost seemed like him, because then obviously the Madonna. I think he just had the one cup. Is that all they got? A cup that shouldn't have counted. Always has to be said.
I mean, they were going to win the series anyway, but yes, the goal should not have counted. That's correct. But
yes, Brett Hull, looking at you.
It's a little bit like the 1985 Don Denkinger World Series thing, where it's like, did Denkinger blow the call? Yeah. Was it the worst blown call ever? No. Does it excuse the Cardinals getting destroyed the next day? Absolutely not.
Well, and blowing that game still. Like, it wasn't like that call ended that game. It's sort of the Steve Bartman argument of Chicago. It's the domino you can throw stuff at, but a lot went wrong after that. And to come out after that game, and it's kind of like the Cardinals coming out and getting absolutely destroyed by Roy Oswalt after the Pujols moonshot onto the tracks.
There are certain sports things that you take a different perspective on when if you think that sports curses aren't real, which I do not. Which is like why the funny thing is like Theo Epstein's going to sail into the Hall of Fame because he broke 2 curses. And to be clear, like he belongs in the Hall of Fame because he won a World Series with 2 franchises and did a really good job. But curses aren't real. That's not part of the thing. Like
No.
he did really well with 2 decently big market teams, and like that's worth something. But it's not. You're a magician.
Yeah. Right. It's a fun narrative, but
yeah,
I mean, honestly, when you look like Madonna, you could argue that Dallas team should have had multiple cups. But the problem was you also had like Detroit and Colorado when they were also at their heights. New Jersey.
The West in particular was loaded. Like, I mean, Jersey was good, obviously, but the West, I think, was deeper at that point.
Yeah, I mean, well, and you have to think, too, the way that these teams played, when you had more good, big physical teams to play with, New Jersey maybe had a little bit easier time getting there. And to be fair, I think these Dallas teams, while they had some good goalies and name and such, they didn't get the goaltending level that a Patrick Waugh or Martin Brodeur,
correct,
or whoever the inexplicable, like what Chris Osgood or whoever Detroit had, Manny
Vernon,
Legacy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Mike Vernon. Yeah.
Detroit was very much a team that was designed to not need a great goalie.
I mean,
and like Vernon's a Hall of Famer, but he was past his prime. Osgood is probably too often dumped on. Like he was a perfectly competent goalie, but he was not a superstar by any means.
But when you had, Yzerman, Fedorov, I mean, all those guys.
Granted, near the end of that run, they also got who, in my opinion, is the greatest goalie of all time, in Dominik Hasek. But
again, outside of his prime, but
barely outside of his prime, though. He was still really good.
He was still good, really good. I mean, better than he was in Chicago to start. But digress. Mike Modano.
All right. Also,
I have a feeling I know where you're going with here.
Well, do you remember what a singer Mike Modano was married to? / if you look this person up on Wikipedia, he's in her picture.
Mike Modano. He was married to a singer? Do I not know this?
This was a briefly popular singer.
It was. School. Oh my gosh! Yeah, I Want to Be Bad.
Yep.
Willa Ford. That was her name, right?
Ford is correct. Yes.
I want to be bad. Make it look so good. Anyway.
That sounds
I forgot that until just now. I forgot that Mike Modano was married to Willa Ford. Holy cow! You blown
the first thing I think of when I think of Hockey Hall of Famer Mike Modano. But
I think of the Mighty Ducks. It's fine.
Yeah. All right. My number 2 pick. This might be a controversial pick. This might not be who you're thinking is the obvious one. But if I pick somebody else, there's a chance you're gonna get this guy. So I'm gonna go with it. I am gonna go with Rob Blake.
I thought you might go with him. I think it's an insane pick, but it's fine.
All right, Rob Blake was the number 70 overall pick for the Kings. Also had a good run with the Colorado Avalanche. Totals obviously aren't as high as some of these forwards. Rob Blake is by far the best defenseman in this draft. Not that affects where he should go, but he was the only player other than Solani who ever made an All-NHL first team. He also won the Norris that year. 10-time All-NHL vote recipient, which is the highest left on the board, second to Modano in this draft. 3-time second-team All-NHL. Got Norris votes 8 times, which is, if I'm looking correctly, 80% of the total times anybody in this draft received Norris votes. But he was a really good player. He's a Hall of Famer. There are some arguably splashier players here in terms of forwards, but he was number 3 on my board, so I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things to look at. I mean, to be fair, I think I had Rob Blake at number 5 on my board, so it's not like I'm like, this is a ridiculous pick or anything. Just some interesting things in terms of Rob Blake. He had a career plus minus, which I know that's not the be all end all stat. As a defenseman, had a career plus minus of -4.
That is that's fair, but also I will note, and maybe I should be saving it until later. There's a guy on this list, granted a forward, who has an excellent defensive reputation, who has a much more negative plus minus.
Agreed.
Just to the flaws of this.
Agreed, but I think you can look at the flaws of it. But as a defenseman, I take maybe a little more, when your name has defense in it. I know that he obviously, he's a guy who almost has a 50-50 split in his point shares. Actually, his offensive point share is 67.3 for his career. Defensive point share is 60.3. So a defenseman who more of his point shares came from his offense. Which
I will say, I think of him as a little bit like kind of a proto like Erik Karlsson, where I think that his defense is better than his plus minus would suggest. But like certainly offense is like the main calling card here. I'm not going to try to deny that.
No, but this is also a time maybe this is the mentality of then versus now. The the offensive defenseman like this was maybe not as prevalent as it is now. So
yeah, like this was coming not that long after like the rise of Paul Coffey, who was like basically ridiculed for supposedly being like an absolutely atrocious defensive defenseman. Which
speaking of Detroit Red Wings,
yeah, which there isn't really any statistical evidence to back up that he was like a terrible defensive defenseman. He just scored so much that people must assume like, well, if he's playing defense, he must not be able to play defense. And people do that sometimes with like Bobby Orr, even though obviously Bobby Orr has a very good reputation. But
right, well, that's the thing too. Just another thing. It's like I understand like when I give the plus minus stat, when you're a top line guy like Rob Blake. At even strength, you're often going to be lined up against the other team's top line forwards. So it's not everyone is Nick Lidstrom when it comes to plus minus. He's like the king of plus minus.
Well, he was also on a good team for almost his entire career, whereas like a guy like Bork, who I think Bork has I think you can argue Bork is the second best defenseman ever, and but he was on some atrocious Boston Bruins teams in there.
Oh, agreed. I think that, and I mean, point to take with Rob Blake, he wasn't on, the greatest, he may have had a really good forward that he played with some, I don't know. But,
Milan Hajduk?
Colorado legend. I mean, that's the thing too. It's like, he started out with the Kings, but he was on those prime Colorado teams a lot too in the early 2000s, right? So it's like, that's going to help when you're, playing with, when you actually look at like his plus minus stats, they were the best they ever were pretty much when he was with Colorado. So but you got to keep in mind when you have Hajduk, Forsberg, Sakic.
I think you're leading off with Hajduk in that forward group because I said Hajduk. Thank you.
I mean, but then even too, like, I can't remember who he was paired with, but like, they had some great defensive defensemen on that team. Like Adam Foote was a really good defensive defenseman.
Yeah.
Sandis Ozolinsh, I think, was on some of those teams as well. Uwe Krupp, of course, or Uwe Krupp, for get my German pronunciations correct here. But the awkward thing when I realized my bottle's out of water, but my son left his water bottle here, so I'm going to drink out of it.
It's fine.
Yeah, but no, I think that Rob Blake, I agree, by far the best defenseman in a draft that frankly doesn't like the depth of the defenseman in this draft isn't. He's a tier, like probably 2 or 3 tiers above the next defenseman.
Yeah, I have some defensemen lower down on my board, but like it's a big gap. So
yeah.
All right,
no,
number 4, you are on the board.
Number 4, I have to go with a guy who I texted John when I was researching this stuff, and I didn't realize statistically how good of a career this guy had, and now I'd be an absolute jerk to not take him here. And that is drafted number 67 overall by the Pittsburgh Penguins, Mark Recchi.
Yep,
like a guy whose name you know.
Yeah.
And it, or if you're me, for the half of his like life and career, you call him Mike Recchi, and you really don't have any good reason why you did that.
I assume you were thinking of Colorado Avalanche legend Mike Ricci.
I mean, it could have been. But I mean, this is a guy who actually had the second most points in this draft. He has more points than Madonna.
Yeah.
577 goals, 956 assists for 1,533 points.
He has 3
And
Stanley Cups with, I believe, with 3 different teams. Is that
3 different teams, I believe.
Pittsburgh, Boston, and then there's somebody in the middle that I'm.
Was
We're
it
on both
Montreal?
Pittsburgh teams, maybe.
Did he get one with Montreal in the 90s?
Maybe I will look that up.
Maybe I forget because I
It
know
would be 93 was the year they won.
Montreal. Okay, I think he went to Montreal 94, 95.
He had 2 with Pittsburgh.
2 with Pittsburgh. Okay,
Yeah.
so this.
Actually,
I mean,
he didn't. He did not have 2 with Pittsburgh. He got traded from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia during their second Cup run, and then in 2005, 2006, he got traded from Pittsburgh to the Carolina Hurricanes, who won the Cup.
Okay. So, and I don't think he re-signed with Carolina after that. So he played like a fraction of the season and got a cup and then left.
He went back to Pittsburgh, like the David Perron of Pittsburgh.
He really is, but like, I mean, just like straight solid. This guy, like,
yeah.
When you look at him, and admittedly, when you're playing on some of those Pittsburgh teams early in your career, good guys to be around, I'd say.
Yeah, he's the leading assist guy in this draft for a reason. It's pretty good teammates.
I'm gonna say at least 2 big reasons that I can think of.
Yeah, but I mean, like he also played with like Eric Lindros. Like there were some.
Yeah, so in Philadelphia, I mean, Montreal, while they weren't winning cups, they still had good players in the mid '90s. So it's a guy who just, frankly, the reason he gets drafted so high is because of the longevity and the point totals. Like he's a stats guy, is why he gets probably drafted so high versus some of these other guys.
Yeah.
But then another guy that, not afraid to like hit somebody. I think hit almost 1,000 penalty minutes or over 1,000 penalty minutes in his career. While averaging, over 20 minutes a game. So it's a lot of time on the ice, and
career plus minus exactly 0.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like he's the Stan Musial of same number of hits on the road and at home kind of thing. I feel like with the plus minus of I was you take the good with the bad. Interesting when they converted some of his. And I imagine it's just for the time when I calculated it, but some of his advanced stats, like his Corsi and his ozone start percentages, are both under 50%. Which, like, I'll be honest, I'm just looking at this at the summary within Hockey Reference, and I haven't dug in enough. Like, it's probably from when they just started keeping those stats, which was probably like the last 4 years of his career.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But it's like, can you imagine what those numbers would be playing on those Pittsburgh teams? Like his Corsi would have probably been like 60% or something. Like,
yeah.
But I mean, stats guy.
Yeah, so Recchi was number 4 on my list. I will say I do think he's a little bit of a compiler. I think that he just played forever. He played until he was on the 2011 Cup team with Boston, and then he went out top. Was never all NHL first team, only 1 second team. I held that against him a little bit, but I mean, certainly a very solid player, and 577 goals, 1,533 points, which is the most in the draft. That's pretty good.
10-time All-Star, I think I have on here. So it's
I don't really keep track of All-Stars as part of my stats, which I probably should, because I keep track of like penalty minutes and like other things I don't think are particularly relevant.
Keep track. I mean, frankly, you keep track of like first team and second team, that kind of stuff, which I feel like that's all arbitrary voting kind of stuff, but I guess they all are if you think about it. So
yes. So I am going to, for my second pick in a row, pick a player with a career negative plus minus. Minus 39 for his career, despite the fact that he won 2 Selkies and was a 10-time Selkie vote recipient. He's a currently coaches the Carolina Hurricanes, also won a Stanley Cup with them, and was drafted 9 overall by the St. Louis Blues. I am going with Rod the Bod Brind'Amour. He is a player that comes up a lot when it comes to Hall of Fame discussions. I think kind of a classic because they let Guy Carbonneau in. There's this feeling of like, if you were ever like a decent defensive, like two-way kind of player, you must go into the Hall of Fame. I don't know. I think we're kind of coming up on the part where I think there's a lot of guys who like you can make a case for them as Hall of Famers, but they're not like slam dunk guys, and I think he is sort of in that realm. 1,184 career points. Was never a All NHL player, and in fact was only received votes for All NHL twice, which does give me a little bit of pause. But seems like a guy who has sort of the leadership. Obviously, his coaching career very much was like a beloved captain of the Carolina Hurricanes whenever they won the cup, and just a really like solid player to have like in the room. And I think ideally, if you're like trying to be a great team, he probably wouldn't be like your number one center, but as a number two, you could do a lot worse than Mr. Bod. Also, he went to Notre Dame, which I find interesting for like that particular time period. There weren't as many Canadians that were going the college route. I mean, Rob Blake did as well. He went to Bowling Green, which is very weird. But Brind'Amour at number 5.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll be honest, I had him at number 7 on my list.
Okay.
4 through 8, 4 through 9 are all pretty tight in there together. I think you can make arguments around.
Well, let's put it this way. I think Brind'Amour and the two guys that I have right below him are like extremely close, and I assume you're probably going to pick one of those guys next, and I'll just go ahead and take the other one. So.
Yeah, and I think it's a, guy who immediate impact kind of thing, made the all-rookie team as a rookie. 4th in Calder voting that year. I'd say that a guy who, yes, like you alluded to, shows flawless stats, a guy who, like, I'll be honest, like, I remember seeing him in the later stages of his career, but was never a guy that I was like, oh yeah, this is, like, definitely not flashy in how he played.
Certainly not, yeah. I mean, even in his prime, he was never, like I said, he was never first team All-NHL on our team, so.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a guy, like you said, this is another longevity play. I mean, most goals he ever had in a season was 37, which is...
And he played in a high offense era, too.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, you got to keep in mind he's scoring these in the time period when Brett Hull's scoring 86, and I think that's what he had that year. But
was Brind'Amour? He would still been around for the 86 goal season, right? He traded pretty early, but
let's see, what year was that? Was that 90?
I think it's 90-91.
90-91. Okay, that would have been right around his rookie year. So because I think he's here 2 seasons with the Blues.
I don't think he played the year after he got drafted, though.
Yeah, 89-90, it was his rookie year. Okay. And then 90-91, and then, he went to Philadelphia in 91-92. So, yeah, I mean, a guy who, let's be honest, anybody that you can just call Bod, like, Rod the Bod. I mean, who wants anything, like, why wouldn't you want Rod the Bod on your team?
So with my last 2 picks, I've picked Rob and Rod. With your last picks, you've picked Mike and Mark. We're really defining certain...
It's all right. I'll go off the board and not pick somebody with a name close to these as my next one. While it pains me to necessarily pick this guy, because personally I don't necessarily love this guy.
Yeah.
But... has one of the most hockey player things ever of him sitting on the bench just wiggling his broken in like 3 places jaw back and forth after getting just absolutely smashed in into the boards by, I forget who it was off the top of my head, but don't know if he's still a TV analyst or not, because frankly, I just don't watch
He is
hockey
not.
anymore. I think he had a situation as to why he is not
did.
anymore, if
He
I
sure
remember
did.
correctly.
Yeah.
But he was in 2019, because I remember him interviewing Blues on the ice after they won the Cup. And Jeremy Roenick is where we're going to go.
Yeah, he was next on my board. That's completely reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, it's a, I mean, you can't argue with how he was as a player. As far as what he did, I mean, when he played with, the Blackhawks, as I was first getting into hockey as a youngster, I hated him. You just didn't like him. He was starting stuff all the time, and yet then he'd turn around and put 2 goals on you like it was nothing.
And then when you were 6 years old, you watched Swingers, and that turned around your entire perception of Jeremy Roenick.
I was actually 5 when I watched Swingers, but that's fine. No, but I mean, he was a highly touted pick too. He was taking number 8 overall in the draft.
Yeah.
I find this interesting that he finished 3rd in Calder voting, but did not make the All Rookie team.
That is funny. Interesting. Yeah.
I don't know how the All Rookie team works, because he did technically play like 20 games in 88, 89, but then wasn't eligible for Calder voting until the next year. I don't know if that makes you ineligible for the All Rookie team. It could be something like that. 1,216 career points, 1,463 career penalty minutes.
Yeah.
He
kind of did it all.
Yeah, I mean, he was just, I mean, to be fair, I have 3 fairly similar type players. But we're a team of centers. Well, I guess Recchi was a winger already, but
yeah.
We're a team of just some forwards right now. But I mean, if I put out a line of Mike Modano, Mark Recchi, and Jeremy Roenick, like, I imagine one of them could play one of the wings. Like,
I think Roenick moved to the wing like late in his career.
Later in his career, I believe he did. But like how he ended his career with San Jose, which that was weird to see. But yeah, I mean, just tough guy. And I mean, Roenick, he, after being in Chicago, he kind of had a chance to become like one of the faces of the new franchise out in Arizona and stuff too. He was, a big part of them. Obviously, you had, some of the other guys there, Keith Tkachuk, and then I feel like the torch will forever be carried, at least in my eyes, as far as the king of the Coyotes being Shane Doan.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you look at his awards and everything, like, made the All-Star team 5 times. He got Hart votes twice, Selke votes 4 times, but never finished higher than 9th in the voting. Like, I feel like he was a guy who maybe was made more popular. Like, he's obviously a very good player.
He definitely had a personality that I think gravitated, and probably the fact that he's American probably helped too.
Yeah,
marketing him in the United States.
And whether it's fortunate or fortunate, I think you could have the interesting Hall of Fame discussion with him, because I don't believe he's in the Hall of Fame.
He's not. And actually, I was going to say that I feel like he is kind of like talked about like the same way that Kurt Schilling's talked about with the Baseball Hall of Fame, where it's like, oh, well, he's a great player, but if he can only keep his mouth shut.
Yeah.
Kurt Schilling has a much better Baseball Hall of Fame case than Jeremy Roenick does. Like, Jeremy Roenick has a fine Hall of Fame case. I think he's borderline. Like, Schilling, by the stats, absolutely should be in, and Roenick is getting kind of a little bit of a bump, I think, because he's so obnoxious.
Yeah, and it's, it's one of those things, too, where, and I don't know where you stand enough to do it. Like, I just want to make fairly clear, at least, and they've probably noticed this, we've had this in almost every draft. It seems like there's somebody who has something that's a little problematic off the field. When we're terms of drafting, or at least when I do my drafts, I'm looking at the product on the field, on the ice, on the hardwood, wherever we're kind of doing these drafts.
Yeah.
Not condoning the things that they've done off the ice. But I think that's how Hall of Fame voting should honestly be, and sometimes for the most part as well. But
sometimes it bleeds over. Sometimes you have a case where, like, if somebody gets suspended for an off-the-field infraction, like, they don't put up stats, so therefore that hurts their case. Or you have guys who, if they're considered like bad teammates, that's gonna kind of hurt how they're viewed in that prism. I don't know
Yeah.
that Roenick necessarily has any like strong legal trouble, unless I'm forgetting something. I think it's just that he's
I think he's just kind of an instigator, and I remember seeing things like his teammates loved playing with a guy like him. He's the kind of guy you wanted to play with, especially in the era he's playing in. You got to remember that in this era, like your fourth line, half the time would play 8 minutes a game and was there to fight if you started to get down or they were getting chippy with you. Like that's, at least a member or two of that fourth line. This is why the Blues had Kelly Chase and Tony Twist both active in games at sometimes, because you would just, you'd take runs at guys sometimes. And Roenick was a guy who would do that, but then also had the skill to back it up. And that would just tick teams off even more. So,
yeah, Kelly Chase is eligible for this draft, by the way. Undrafted player, but he is 1988
eligible.
Draft eligibility year. He's not on my board, but
yeah,
he's eligible.
Not on my board either. He's, we love you, Chaser, and we're with you in your fight and everything. But
yeah, he actually has a big fundraiser coming up this weekend in the St. Louis area. And apparently, I learned today that apparently Garth Brooks and Dirk Bentley are going to.
Oh,
so,
man.
bringing some.
I'm gonna say, I feel like I should tell my wife, because I can maybe get her to go to that, because my wife is a huge fan of both of them, actually, and has seen both of them recently in concert. So
I would check what the prices are going for before you let her know. But if she's a Draft Day listener, which I'm sure she listens to every episode we do, then
she sure is.
Yeah. We should do an episode where we just like talk smack on people that we suspect aren't listening to the podcast that we know. And
so all of like, so basically we can't talk smack on
all but like 4 people we know.
Yeah, I was gonna say like maybe like 5 to 10 people. Like,
I'm not
shout out to one of my pastors who told me that he was listening to this and his kids told me they were listening to it. However, when I asked them what episode they were listening to, we're like, we really don't remember what you were talking about. So they probably were not listening that closely. But
we do
stream counts all the same.
Yeah. All right. So I am up next on the board. So I'm going to start off my like kind of prelude to this pick by pointing out that I had a great bit of affection during his Blues career for Hockey Hall of Famer Pierre Turgeon, who is not in this draft, to be clear.
He's not in this draft.
Turgeon was an interesting Hall of Fame pick in that there are some people that are like oddly very confident that he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. And Greg Wyshynski of ESPN is probably the person that drives me the most nuts with it, because he's constantly saying how this guy is so much better and is so clearly a Hall of Famer, more so than Pierre Turgeon. Was it because Alexander Mogilny played for his favorite team? Who's to say, really? It's impossible to know. But Alexander Mogilny, who I think is a credible, if not slam dunk Hall of Fame candidate, is my pick. He came over a little bit later into the NHL because he was coming from the Soviet Union. He was an 89th overall pick. I didn't really look into it specifically, but I'm sure that was because there was like 1988, there was not a like absolute certainty that the Soviet Union was going to break up. So that's about where you'd pick. But averaged over a point per game for his career, 473 goals in 990 games. So nearly a goal every 2 games. Second team All NHLs. Just generally quite a dynamic offensive player.
Lady Bing winner.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to add, really. I mean, of the guys left in the draft, he's the leader in both goals and assists. I don't really think of him as being a great defensive player, but he did get Selke votes one time, so...
Yeah, I mean, got hard votes once,
My personal stance on this draft is that there's a clear-cut top 7, and this is number 7 on there, and that there's another tier full of 2 players that are like a step down, but they're both really good, and then it's going to start. The second half of this draft is going to go a lot quicker than the first half. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and it's funny. A guy like Alexander McGillney, and this story is probably actually going to be like, I feel like John is going to understand it, and the rest of you are going to be like, well, that's really weird. But Alexander McGillney is a guy that I probably knew about far too much or heard his name far too much as a child, because my dad used to just like find names of like players that he thought were like fun, like. And Alexander McGillney was one. Another one was Cardinals legend John Frascatore.
Is he saying the player's fun or that the name is fun?
The name is fun.
Okay, because with McGillney both apply. With Frascatore,
It's the name.
One applies. Yes.
Yeah. But what my dad would do, and he would be bored and he would just want to mess with us when we were kids, is he'd say our first names. Like for me, he'd be like Jason McGillney, and he would, for my sister, I remember he would be like Rachel. Shout out to my sister Rachel. He'd say Rachel Frascatore. Sure. Yes, and my sister would always get mad and say my name's not Tori. It was very cute. My sister, keep in mind, my sister's like 4 or 5. My dad's doing this, but my dad would use McGillney all the time because he just liked saying it, I think. And for anyone that knows my dad, who I'm sure is also a big Draft Day listener, shout out to you, Pop. Love you. He would just say it over and over and over, like for days at a time. And it's like, okay, Dad, I get it. But I know it's a really lame story, but thank you for letting me walk down memory road with my family. And but yeah, I mean, the guy who just as solid as they come. I won't get into the Mogilny versus Turgeon discussion here.
They're not even like similar players. It's just a weird comp. And honestly, like, if you think McGillney's better than Turgeon, I'm not even going to like argue against you. But like the idea that, like, if you want to get mad that McGillney's on the Hall of Fame, point out Guy Carbonneau, point out like Kevin Lowe. Like there are guys in the Hall of Fame that are clearly worse.
Yeah, agreed. And it's whatever you. As soon as somebody else comes up, maybe they'll do it. But
Right.
So I'll slide into this next tier, guys. Here, and I'll take a guy selected. For the record, too, Mogilny was actually number 6 on my board.
Okay.
So you got, in my terms, you got a bargain with him. But now, as we're sitting, and I'm sure saying who the top 7 is who is off my board at this point. But next guy I'm going to go with was taken. I already took number 67 overall pick, so now I'm going to go to the pick right after him. At number 68 to the New York Rangers, I am going to take. Man, I'm getting a lot of Americans. I'm just not realizing in this draft, but I will take Tony Monte.
Not only are you getting a lot of Americans, you have back-to-back picks that went to Thayer Academy in Massachusetts, which is not a thing that I realized until I was like looking through this right now. I was like, oh wow, that I think the high school team with Jeremy Roenick and Tony Amonte was probably pretty good.
They're probably good. Yeah. It's like because you don't see that in the States so much. Like a junior team that's like loaded that you would see up in.
Oh God, no. Yeah.
Like the fact that I think in Halifax you had like Nathan McKinnon, but the goalie was also Matt Murray on that junior team. Like it's like okay.
Am I remembering correctly that I'm trying to remember who was on that London Knights team? I know Corey Perry's one of them, but like there's just like a ton of.
Yeah, it's like how did they lose a game kind of a thing. But
so the closest thing I don't have a whole lot of exposure to like high school hockey or whatever, and I've mentioned this before on the pod and in life many times, but I went to high school with Pat Maroon. Pat Maroon, who is like a perfectly like good NHL player in terms of like bottom 6 guy, you like to have him, but like by no means a superstar and never has been, except for that one season he got a bunch of goals playing with Connor McDavid. But like he was just at Oakville, just absolutely like laying waste to everybody because the talent gap between like if you're an NHL player, if you're like the least offensively competent NHL player and you get dropped and you're like playing at like a high school level, you're gonna just slaughter everybody.
Yeah. It's like you put a professional guy. Oh, you're 5 years retire, but you throw him in a beer league game, he's still going to absolutely
if you're
crush
like
everybody.
if you're like Kelly Chase or Tony Twist and you're playing at like a low level, you're not an enforcer at that level. You're an enforcer in the NHL because that's what you have to do to survive. But you're like the greatest scorer that anyone's ever seen.
Yeah, it's
anyway, Tony Monte.
Yeah, and with all that said, Tony Monte, I mean, solid guy, all rookie team in 91-92. So he's a guy that was drafted who, like a lot of these other picks, kind of came in within a year. He had a couple of years before he went in. I believe he played at BU, if I'm not mistaken. Went to Boston University, obviously a staple in the U.S. college hockey scene for decades at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of guys on the Miracle on Ice team were BU guys, actually.
I believe they're in the Froze 4 that's coming up next weekend, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, in St. Paul, I think. So
yeah, that sounds right.
I know they had some regionals in St. Louis.
They did. Tickets were extremely expensive.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you play not at the big arena.
Yeah.
And you have the potential, I don't know if it happened, but you had a potential for Michigan State versus Michigan to happen. Which
the cheapest tickets for the opening sessions were like $250. It's like, I don't know any of these people. I have to pass on that one.
I'm gonna say it's like Minnesota's not here, so I can't see Snuggery play. I'm fine, But yeah, I mean, a guy, long career, most notably with Chicago, straight out with the Rangers, but
with Jeremy Roenick.
With Jeremy Roenick, never really got made the all rookie team, finished second in Calder voting his rookie year. And then from there, just, did get Hart votes one time, made the all-star team a few times, and then finished extremely low. Like, no offense, but his final year in the NHL, he finished 69th in Lady Bing voting. So nice.
How many players were getting Lady Bing votes that was even... Like, I realize, the sex number, but I'm just trying to think, what...
At least 69. Like, no offense. Like, why put that in the awards thing? Like, if you're not top 10, I don't really care. Like, I'm not going to lie to you.
Like, I think Ryan Tepera finished higher than that for MVP whenever he accidentally got a vote instead of Trey Turner from Rick Hummel.
Oh gosh, you broke me with that one.
So I'm glad Rick Hummel lived long enough to see Ryan Tepera on the Cardinals. That was,
I mean, that was great. But yeah, I mean, 900 points in his career, plus 96, 416 goals, 484 assists. I mean, probably not Hall of Fame numbers, like probably not getting in.
Yeah, he's the top guy on my board that I can't really make a Hall of Fame case for.
Yeah, but
good player.
I mean, it's so funny to think about. Like, just like even we talked about if you take like the worst NHL player, but when they're in high school or whatever, the level they're playing against, it's like even though like it's like the level step up. In certain sports, so like even like I think hockey, maybe like one of the bigger jumps to get into the Hall of Fame. It's not like basketball, where if you were a halfway decent player, like you're probably getting into the Hall of Fame. Like I remember at one point years ago, like whatever the metric for like point shares war is in NBA, like the worst player that like wasn't in was like Sean Marion at the time.
He's the best player that wasn't in, but
best player that didn't get in, which is like, wow, that. Like, no offense to Sean Marion and his ridiculous jump shot, but
if I recall correctly, I could be mistaken. If I recall correctly, the two highest scoring players in NBA history that aren't in the Hall of Fame that are eligible for the Hall of Fame are Tom Chambers and Anton Jameson, who like were good players, but like let's pump the brakes on.
Right, and it's like a guy like a Monte. It's like because. I remember, and once again, maybe it's living in St. Louis. So, but I mean, this is a guy who had 3 40-goal seasons. Like, it wasn't like he was offensively inept, but he had 35 as a rookie, 33 his second year, 32 Or he only had 17. So he had to step down his third year, 15. Like, he had a weird lull for a couple of years where he was playing. He played a lot of games one year, then he got hurt. But, I mean, all in all, solid career. I don't know. Like you said, not a ton to add on Tony Monte. He was a good player.
That's true. So the next pick that I have, this point forward, it starts to get not dire because there's like okay players, but the drop off is going to be pronounced. My number 9 overall pick, I'm going to go with Trevor Linden, number 2 overall pick for the Vancouver Canucks. Was never like a superstar. He got all NHL votes one time. Granted, he was a center playing against like a really strong era of centers, but looking at the career stats, 867 points, played in 1,382 career games, which is a lot of games. I think that you can make a case that, especially once you get into like the like second half of the lottery, games played becomes like a perfectly valid metric because you're looking at guys who just have the longevity. Was probably was he the second best forward on that Canucks team that made the finals behind Bure? He might have been. He was still a little young at that point, but like he was kind of like one of those guys, and like he's a guy who could like be a top line forward for you. He could be a middle six forward for a really good team, though very much was tied to Vancouver throughout the bulk of his career. But yeah, that's my pick at number 9.
Yeah, I think the clear pick at 9.
Yeah, like he might be the single easiest pick that either of us has made so far, and he's like definitively worse than all of the players other than Amante, who, to be clear, I still had him below Amante.
Yeah,
but like there's a drop here. I'm honestly not sure what route you're going to go with your next, but it's going to be somebody who is like materially worse than Trevor Linden.
Yeah, and it's Trevor Linden, a guy who. It's funny if he was playing today, keep him, I like to think of these guys in terms of sometimes like, oh, they were, the way we look at drafts now, like, to where we expect the world out of guys. Like, if you're a first round pick at all, I feel like there's just hope in your team that like this guy's going to come up and be a stud.
Yeah.
Like whether it's like the Blues right now are like, oh, Snuggerud, maybe he'll be a part of the team next year. And then like immediately he's like, oh no, I'm going back to Minnesota for another year. Like,
yeah. And to be fair, like the realistic expectation for him was never going to be that he was going to be like the top forward on the team next year. Like rookies generally don't do that. And
but a guy at number 2, right. Yeah. And we've seen it recently. I mean, remember Lafreniere, like, all the hype we had surrounding him. He's going to be a perfectly good NHL player. He's really starting to come into his own.
He's going to be the best top 2 pick that the Rangers have in that like era because he's better than Cabo Caco.
Oh, Cabo. Yeah. So it's
talk about guys we probably should have included in our draft bust. I think Lafreniere I haven't given out all hope on, though. I think
and playing with like I think he played with Panarin this season, and it was probably the best he's looked this year. But I'm big into the hobby of collecting cards, and I hit one of his rookie cards, and that was when I was big into just like I like to get the hits and sell them, and boy did I come out on top selling that rookie card of him because I could buy that now for about a fifth of what I sold it for.
I truly believe that my nickname for Alexis Lafreniere, if he had been a better NHL player, could have taken off and could have like gotten me retirement money because I feel like calling him Alex Quebec was going to be just a gold mine forever.
Boy, you did love calling him Alex Quebec. Like
now he just never comes up.
Yeah, because now it's like, oh, he's a, he may still be a top 6 guy, but it's not.
I should also point out that Alex Trebek was still alive when I was making this reference. Now it feels like a little bit dated, but
it's
a couple Canadian legends though.
They are that indeed. All right, so let's go to number 10 here as we start to fly through more. And frankly, I have kind of like a list here. I'm actually not even going to go with the guy that I have at 10 because I probably have ranked him too high at the time. But to the guy I have 11 on my board, and I'm going to take a guy that honestly, like, I don't know that I remember him playing all that much. Like, I remember his name a little bit.
This is a great sign for how good this player is.
Yeah. But when you look at his stats, I'm taking 76th overall pick to Buffalo, Keith Carney.
Next. He was next on my board.
And it's a guy who, like I said, he's a defenseman. And I'll honest, the note I made to myself was, and I know I've harped on this a lot and touched on it with Rob Blake, but this is a guy who is a defenseman who, for his career, was plus 164.
I believe he's tops in this draft.
So, and he didn't play he played I guess I'm just reassembling the mid 90s Chicago teams right now because he was on a few of those. And then I guess he just followed Roenick around because then he went to Phoenix and then played with the Ducks and ended with the Wild. But this isn't a guy who no votes for anything except was an all-star in 06-07 and finished 19th in Norris voting at age 36.
Yeah, that was wild. That
I see what you did there because that's who he's playing for at the time.
That is, yeah. We'll pretend that was my intention.
No, but I knew this guy, but but this is maybe he's the akin to Barrett Jackman winning the Calder.
A little bit, yeah. I think he's a little bit better than Barrett Jackman, but yeah, that kind of
probably. But yeah, but a defensive defenseman. This is a guy who played over 1,000 NHL games and had 228 points.
Yeah,
and yet he has a career point shares of 66.8. 5.3 of those are offensive point shares.
Goodness gracious.
So we're talking over 90% of this guy's point shares are defensive. And to be fair, in point shares, I believe he's somewhere around. Let me see my list. I think it's how it's sorted right now.
I think he's actually he was the highest remaining guy. Yeah,
he's number 10 in this draft in point shares. To be a guy who only has 5 offensive point shares and to be top 10 in the draft.
Yeah, he's definitely a role player, but a good role player to have.
A good role player, but it's you don't. And this is the interesting. This is what I love about going back to some of these drafts because we're going to come with the names that I, later in this draft that I definitely know more. But at the end of the day, they're not better players than Keith Carney. And I'm sure if you're a guy who, watched him more or is really kind of steeped in hockey lore, you're probably there's some guy who's going to listen to this in 10 years and discover this podcast and be like, oh my gosh, Keith Carney's the best defenseman I ever saw play.
It's an incredible bit of optimism that you think that someone's going to be listening to this podcast in 10 years.
The internet's forever, man. That's what I'll say.
I'm not saying that they couldn't listen to it in 10 years. Maybe someone's just really into the movie, so they pull it up and they're really disappointed. They're not talking about Jennifer Garner at all. All right. So for my number 11 overall pick, so you picked a couple teammates from high school with Jeremy Roenick and Tony Amante. I'm picking a couple teammates from the Soviet Union because I had Alexander McGillney, and I am picking Valery Kamensky, who was drafted by the Quebec Nordiques. He ended up being a kind of formative middle six type forward with the Colorado Avalanche once they got good. Exactly 200 career goals, 501 career points, only 637 career games. That's a little bit of a situation of coming over a little bit later. He was retired by 2002, so definitely the least longevity of anybody that's been picked so far. But I very much remember him being just a good offensive player. He was an all NHL vote recipient twice. That's pretty much the extent of what I have. And if you think that was a narrow amount of things to say about a player, as Bachman Turner Overdrive said, taking care of business. No, they said you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, Valerie Kaminsky, honestly a name that I was more familiar with, maybe kind of crazily more familiar with than Keith Carney even.
I think it's a very memorable name. That was definitely a name that when I was
Yeah.
like 7 or 8 years old stuck out to me.
Yeah, and maybe that's what it was. I'm not gonna lie, like you said, oh, my name's Keith Carney. I'm like, oh yeah, he owns the used car dealership here in town or something. Like, not he's a premier NHL defenseman, but yeah, and you know, Kaminsky, yeah, just a guy who, you know, this is kind of the start of the Soviet guys coming over, like you said. You know, interesting to see, you know, how the NHL would change because of that. So you got to look at these guys a little bit as trailblazers. Him, Mogilny, in a sense, that opened up the door for Detroit to win multiple championships with their great Russian players.
Yes,
I mean,
very much so.
It's and I think that has to be said for something, you know, when you take into consideration these drafts. I mean, we're talking now in terms of, you know, for anybody who is keeping track of kind of where things are in terms of like point shares go, it is, you know, I think the difference between Keith Carney and like Valerie Kaminsky was lower, but you got to remember too, it's per game. I think is probably more where you're thinking, John. Like had he had a longer career, he probably would have been better. I mean, he had 47.7 point shares, whereas Keith Carney was, I think it was 66.8 or something like that. So it's
I think he's like 16th or 17th in terms of point shares. So
yeah, I had him 16th on my board purely for longevity. That's the note I have is had he played longer, he would have been higher on my board.
Fair enough.
But
all right, you're up.
All right, next one. Maybe overshooting a little bit on this guy, but you know, partially going to take him just because of, you know, the steal that he actually was in the draft for your St. Louis Blues in the 10th round. Going to take a defenseman who had minus 23 career, plus minus, but Brett Hedican out of St. Cloud State.
You're really cornering the market on guys who married famous women.
I mean, you know, Willa Ford, are we calling her famous?
The thing is, Willa Ford, I'm pretty sure, is less famous than Mike Modano, even if like my wife is more likely to have known who Willa Ford was. Chris Yamachi's way more famous than Brett Hedican.
Like you know, it's one of the yes, definitely. And to be fair, like Brett Hedican, sure he's a perfectly nice guy, but good jobs on landing Christy Yamaguchi, man. Like, well done.
I think it's fun that they met at the Olympics.
Yeah.
And like had Brett Hedican been drafted earlier, maybe he comes to the NHL earlier. Maybe he doesn't still have Olympic eligibility in 1992. Maybe he doesn't meet Christy Yamaguchi. Maybe we aren't talking about Brett Hedican as much, even if he has a stronger NHL career, because he's married to somebody who is less famous than Christy Yamaguchi.
I mean, it's possible, but he still would have been on this draft because I don't think his career would have been any worse because of it. And sure. I mean, a guy only 294 career points. Another defensive defenseman. I guess I just have themes of they married famous women / they're Americans and they're defensive defensemen. That just seems to be my team right now. But yeah, I mean, sorry, I have a screen that's like going crazy right now. I'm gonna move this. It's not on the crazy screen anymore. But all right, finally got it over here. Sorry. You know, played over 1,000 NHL games, 1,039 NHL games played, and that's really about it. You know, his point shares breakdown, not quite as bad as Keith Carney. About 80% of his point shares come defensively, 43.5 to 12.3 offensively. So,
and like the surface level numbers are just better as far as goals, points, and on a per game basis would be as well. Yeah, that is a fine pick. I am going to ask that I don't have to have any commentary on this pick, though I will have, I guess, minimal. I'm going to take Sean Hill, defenseman, Montreal Canadiens, the number 167 pick, which before Brett Hedican, but that's pretty much it. He has slightly more goals and slightly more points than Hedeken in fewer games. Minus 46. Honestly, I don't think there's a huge world of difference between Sean Hill and Brett Hedeken. They're both American defensemen who are like pretty uninspiring, but they're fine. Our enthusiasm for this draft is like basically like cratering like Black Monday on the stock exchange.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Sean Hill, like my immediate thought to him was the former NFL quarterback Sean Hill, Rams legend Sean Hill.
This is an SEAN, but yes, that's
yes, they are spelled there, and also not the best spelled Sean in this draft.
That's certainly true.
But we'll see if we get to that one. If not,
we've danced around him a couple times.
We have, and he's kind of a fringe for me, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Next pick. So I'm gonna go, a little bit different on my board. Now I'm just picking guys that like for whatever reason were memorable to me, and then have some backup. I'm gonna take Joe Juneau.
Yeah.
With the accent over the E in Joe. Never forget if you're going to spell his name properly. A real kind of one of the first guys that it's weird for me to remember, like in terms of, two-way forwards, like defensive forwards. Like he was a guy that I kind of started to like actually notice, like as I became more aware of the game and see him. He's a guy who only has career point shares of 44.5, and for a forward, 13.9 of those are defensive point shares. So, like over a quarter of this guy's point shares are from defense.
Yeah, I definitely have more of a memory of him being good than he actually was. I definitely remember him because his name was Joe Juneau.
It's a great name. It's a great name.
I think that there was probably a point like early in my NHL fandom where he might have been my second favorite name in the NHL behind Eric Desjardins, which is just a fun thing to say.
And then you realize that like Desjardins is like not that uncommon of a name. Like as you get older, I don't know if you found this within like France and French Canadian, like Desjardins is not.
I found a lot of names that are similar, but I don't know that I've necessarily come across that name a lot, but
Are you thinking of the artist from our earlier?
I am thinking of Jean Dujardin. Yes,
I was going to say, are you thinking of Jean Dujardin? But regardless, I mean, Joe Juneau. I remember. I think most prominently, like my memories of him around the Capitals. Even though we started with Boston.
Yeah.
There was a time period in the 90s where like I loved watching the Capitals because they had Joe Juneau and Ole the goalie. They had Olaf Kolzig. Another great name, by the way.
Peter Bondra, too.
Yeah, but his name wasn't fun.
His name wasn't as fun, but he was a fun player.
Although I believe, is he a PETR, Peter? I think he is.
He is, yes.
Yeah.
I think. Wait, no. Or am I thinking of Peter Nedved?
Nedved is for sure, and Peter...
I think he actually is PETER. I'm not 100% sure.
The Blues had a Peter that was PETR, too, and I can't remember what his name was. His last name was
Peter Angelo?
Peter Cheyenne.
You sure it's not Peter Angelo?
No. Sideline reporter for NBC, Pierre Maguire. But can you tell me like his 4 favorite candies from when he was 6 years old? Because that seems to be the kind of things that you know.
I can tell you his 4 favorite candies, and I can also have the 4 favorite candies of all of his junior teammates.
Wow. What about his triplets, though?
I don't follow him once he got into the NHL. He's dead to me now.
That's fair.
I feel like we're really getting into some sort of NHL deep cuts for anybody that had the patience to listen this far in.
Boy, the days were great on Twitter just watching the hate that people just would throw at Pierre Maguire when he couldn't pronounce Pietrangelo's last name. Those were good times.
Deservedly.
Yeah. All right.
So I am up. I am going to go to the defenseman well once again. I'm going to go with the number 3 overall pick, which obviously compared to Modano and Linden, a little bit underwhelming, but had a decent career. Curtis Lecision, very much a defensive defenseman if you look at points totals and plus minus was negative for his career. Not really sure how that happened exactly. The advanced numbers don't love him, but they don't hate him either. A couple times got all NHL votes, so that's something. I would say he falls into the category of disappointment, but not a outright bust.
Yeah, I would agree.
And he was on some good teams, so maybe he can keep that good energy going.
Yeah, I really don't have anything to add. It's like,
All right,
yep,
you're on the board.
He existed. I don't want you to get all the Soviet guys on your team, so I will take with my next pick Dmitry Kristich.
Yeah, he was next on my board
as the next player. 596 career points, only 811 games played. Another one of those guys coming out of this USSR. Did get Selke votes in his second season. Kind of a fun thing. A guy that, if I'm honest with you, I vaguely remember kind of playing in the NHL. I don't have, I remember Joe Juneau far more than I remember Dmitry Kristich. In terms of, what, and keep in mind, when he made his debut, I was, potentially weeks old.
Dmitry Kristich is very much a remember some guy's kind of name, but I don't have any distinct memories of him.
Yeah, he,
good stats though.
Yeah, multiple 30-goal seasons and 3 or 4 seasons where he had 29 goals. So he's pretty good at 60.3 point shares and almost 600 career points at 811 games played. When you're drafting at this point, you'll take that. So I don't know if you have any other comments, but
I do not.
All right.
I will go with the guy who by far the leading scorer left on the board right now in terms of goals with 309, in terms of points with 660. Number 7 overall pick for the Los Angeles Kings, kind of the Curtis decision of forwards, I would say. Martin Jelena. I remember how to pronounce his last name, and that's basically the extent of my memory of Martin Jelena. But he is, I believe, let me check. Oh, he got Selke votes one time, and he won a cup one time. So he's got that going for him.
Good for him, man.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
What did he sneak in on those Edmonton Cups or?
No, he would have, unless he was.
Oh,
he was drafted by the Kings. Was he part of the Gretzky trade?
He might have been.
He was drafted by the Kings.
Yeah, but he made his debut with Edmonton, I think. So
it was that other guy for the Kings who I'm blanking on his name, but he was the featured guy in the trade pack. Jim Parsons, I'm thinking of. But
okay, yeah. Oh, was he on the first Carolina team to win?
Maybe he played until 2008, so that sounds plausible.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, but number 18. Number 18 pick, you're up.
Number 18 pick. All right. Notice how we haven't done one thing in this draft yet.
I think your next guy is probably my next guy on the board, and I'm pretty unenthusiastic about it. So
yeah, not a great draft for goalies, guys. Like the last draft we did, when there was good drafts. But at this point, it's do I want to take another player or give the goalies a little love? I'll take Stefan Fiset. As
I believe he was also a part of a big trade. Was he part of the Lindros trade? Maybe.
I think was it Lindros?
It's either the Lindros trade or the Patrick Waugh trade. It's one of the big trades involving that franchise.
Yeah, and obviously the Nordiques loved having him on the team because he's a Montreal, Quebec dude. Extremely average career, 164, 153, and 44 record, 16 career shutouts, and a 307 goals against and 899 save percentage.
He was a backup goalie, yeah.
Yeah, but as a guy, if you're not a starter, to be around, 13 years in the NHL and get 390 games played,
yeah.
Why not take him at 18?
You could do worse. Again, he was next on my board, so
Yeah.
Not gonna crush the pick by any means. So with my next pick, I'm actually going to venture away from my top 20 part and go with a guy who has by far the most games of any player remaining. I said I was going to eschew Kelly Chase. I am going to go with what I would consider the more high-end version of Kelly Chase. You could argue more of like the Ryan Reeves of this draft, because very much an enforcer, but had at least some skill to him. Ty Domi was drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs. Had 104 goals in his career, 245 points, 3,515 penalty minutes, which, at least looking at the guys on my board, that's more than Rob Blake and Jeremy Roenick, who are the next two guys that I can see their penalty minute totals that are the highest. He has more penalties than them combined. Very much an enforcer. But, I figure in this era of the NHL, you're still probably going to employ an enforcer, and I would rather have Ty Domi than, like, Tony Twist or somebody who's just, like, a complete zero offensively. Like, he's good enough that, like, you're not going to be embarrassed to, like, put him in the lineup during a playoff game. And also his son is a much better offensive player than him. So, good job, Max.
I say he gave us Max Dummy. I was going to make a joke about I forget who it was that called him Ty Dummy after one of his hits. That was seen as dirty. Yeah, I mean, when you think about it in terms of like guys who are enforcers but had some sort of quality, the other big one is actually in this draft. The only guy that had more penalty minutes than Blake and Roenick was Buffalo Sabres great Rob Ray in this draft as well.
I must have removed him from my list, but yeah, that's...
but yeah, Domi, a guy who, I mean, all in all, he had his role to serve. Yeah, I mean, career point shares of 10.3 or something like that. So, but definitely served his purpose. Was on his fair share of, controversy on the ice kind of thing. Definitely had some cheap shots.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Most notably, what was it? It was Niedermeyer, right? That he hit in the playoffs. Scott Niedermeyer, I think.
I definitely remember an instance of Niedermeyer getting hit. I can't remember for sure if it was Domi, but yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. Oh, and then the other big one with him was and this might have been the Ty Domi was the Ulf Samuelsson.
Speaking of dirty players.
Yeah, I mean
that's a real like roof of the meteor kind of situation.
Yeah, but I think he like legitimately like knocked him out at one point if I remember. So
yeah.
But yeah, I mean a very notable player to get kind of at the end of this draft. So
there's a couple other names that are out there that are not like amazing players, but like I know the names.
Yep. So at the beginning of this podcast, you'll know that I alluded to a guy that I remember fondly with the Blues, and he didn't have a whole lot of time. So just for fun, not even the next name on the board. He didn't make the top 20, but I'm taking him anyway. I'm going to take Alexei Guserev.
Oh.
That's right.
He actually was the next name on the board.
Was he?
Yeah.
So you thought okay, I know who.
I think you were going with Sean Podine.
Nah, I thought about Shajan Podine. But no, Alexei Guserev, which was a dude or Guserov, I think is actually how it's pronounced.
Yeah, it's Guserov.
But he's a guy that I remember so distinctly because he ended his career with St. Louis and he only played 16 games for him. But I remember him so distinctly, I guess from that postseason run, he probably played in with him.
Yeah, I think that would have been his last year when they made it to play Colorado in the conference finals.
Yeah. So it's like, and maybe it's just the fact that, that was a big, I was, 10 years old at the time. 10 or 11, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess it would have been 11 probably by the time the playoffs were happening. And but watching it and seeing the team that I root for actually at that point get as close as they had been in my lifetime to getting back to the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
And seeing this guy and just ingrained in my mind, I can remember Ken Wilson, especially in the first round, saying his name, and stuff like that. But had a serviceable career, played 607 NHL games.
Yeah, like I said, he was next on my board. Like I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, 167 points, plus 50 for his career, so positive plus minus. But at that point, it was all right. Who do we have left? Obviously, there's Sean Podine, Claude LaPointe is an interesting one. There. Keith Jones, who I refuse to put on the list just because his commentating is garbage for the most part.
You took Jeremy Roenick. Interesting.
Well, okay. Slight difference in statistics there.
Yeah, that's fair.
But there was an interesting thing with with Claude LaPointe that I noted. And I think it was just the fact that this far down, he was a guy who played, in 879 games. So that was a longevity stat for him.
Yeah.
We obviously alluded to Sean Podine, or as I will forever call him, Shajon Podine.
Claude LaPointe got Selke votes twice. That's pretty good for a player that didn't get drafted
in
a draft where we were taking Stephane Fiset and Ty Domi pretty late.
Yeah, I mean, it's, he's a guy that, it's an interesting time with that. And then I think the only other player maybe on my board in my top 20 that get drafted, and I overlooked him at point, it was Marty McInnes.
Yeah, he was number 20 on my board. He was the next guy up.
Yeah. So it was but another guy who had some longevity and 420 career points. So, but other than that, this was a fun one, maybe more from a nostalgic standpoint for me. I don't know if you could just to see some of these names again to yes, while I know stuff about even Brett Hennigan, he's not somebody in my lexicon of thoughts or, to get to think about Joe Juneau and then be disappointed by how mediocre of a player he was versus what I thought he was in my head. It's fun to look at.
Is Joe Juneau the second best player in NHL history who is mostly famous because their last name is the same as an American city behind Martin St. Louis?
I don't know.
A player whose last name is Chicago or something.
Yeah, or I'm trying to think. Is there nobody's last? To be fair, we're talking about major St. Louis cities there, because there could be a Springfield. Somebody Springfield's a legitimate last name, and not just saying because I live there, and every state has one.
And there's cities called York or something like that. I'm thinking things that you don't think of as being a last name necessarily. If there was a guy who was named Billy Philadelphia or something, that would stand out.
Now you're just making me think when I was a kid, I always get really excited to see stuff about Martin St. Louis. I'm like, oh, wait, what? And then I'm like, oh, they're talking about the player, not the Blues. And it was a frustrating time to be a Blues fan, man.
First time St. Louis got on the cup was 2003-2004 Tampa Bay Lightning. All right. Jason is in contemplative silence right now.
It's okay. We have one now, so it's not a big deal. It just took us another 15 years, but
that's true. Who gets on next? The Blues or Montreal Canadiens coach Martin St. Louis?
The way they're going now, probably coach Martin St. Louis.
I don't know that I think either has a great chance in the moment, but yeah,
Well, St. Louis has a chance of getting fired and going to a better job and then winning the cup that I think the Blues franchise has of winning a cup. Wait, what if he becomes the coach of the Blues and Martin St. Louis wins a cup with the St. Louis Blues?
That would be amazing. Let's do it. Let's make it happen right now.
If he wants to bring Cole Caulfield with him, that's yeah. Just bring a couple guys down from Montreal.
I'm gonna bring Nick Suzuki so Montreal fans can freak out that the number one, the best center they've had in their minds since Jean Beliveau is gone.
They do love them some Nick Suzuki. All right,
it's so weird.
Do we want to say recap our teams here? I can do it this week if you'd like.
Okay, yeah.
John has Timu Solani, Rob Blake, Rod Dabad, Brendan Moore, Alexander McGillney, Trevor Linden, Valerie Kamensky, Sean Hill, Curtis Lecision, Martin, Jelena. I never learned how to pronounce it like John. And Ty Domi. Excuse me.
It's fine. It's okay.
My team is Mike Madano, however you want to say it. Mark Recchi, Jeremy Roenick, Tony Monte. I believe it's actually Monte.
I like this bit of just having alternate pronunciations for every name.
Yeah, Keith Carney or Kiarney. No, I'm just kidding. That one's not real at all. Mr. Yamaguchi, Brett Hedigan, Joe Juno, Alaska. I got nothing there. And then Dmitry Kristich, Stefan Fise, and Alexei Gusarov.
That's right. All right. Another draft is in the books. And we have officially gone to drafts older than us. So we have all sorts of drafts that we can go to.
Next up, the 1973. I have no idea what our next draft is. I'll be perfectly honest, as we're doing this, we had planned out a bunch of drafts as to what we were going to do. Now we're out of them, so we really need your suggestions if you can.
That's not true. I have 2 more drafts in other tabs on this file. I'll tell you what they are off air, though.
Wow,
right,
you didn't have to call me out on air.
I
was trying to do it. I was doing it as a segue to get their information. No, I don't really care.
All right. Anyway.
With that, follow us at Draft Day Pod on X. Follow me at Draft Day Dadshaw. Follow John at JohnJF125. Check out STLBullpen.com.
That's right.
For some great baseball writing as that season's starting.
And if you are listening, well, obviously, if you've listened to the end of this, this post should be up, but I have a post that I believe will be scheduled for 7 a.m. on Friday, April 5th. I can't swear that that's the case because my plan is to review Adam Wainwright's album that comes out at 11 p.m.
Wow, very nice. I will definitely be tuning into that one to see who has the better country album, Beyonce or Adam Wainwright.
Well, I didn't review the Beyonce album. I listened to it, but I didn't review it.
Trying to think. I believe our good friend and listener of the show, did Ben do a review of it? I think he had. I don't know.
I don't think he did.
Oh, wow.
I was a little worried he was going to ask me to. I was a little worried he was going to ask me to review it, and I was like, I don't want Beyonce fans getting mad at me. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's like the time I laughed at the fact that in a celebrity NHL All-Star game, Chris Pronger pinned Justin Bieber up against the boards. And then I was getting yelled at in Italian by some believer, and it was just this is awkward. I know you can edit all this out because you probably don't want the fact that you were afraid Ben was going to ask you to do something in here, but
it's fine. It's fine.
But no, I mean, if you like Beyonce, tell us what you thought of her country album. Another thing, guys, honestly, that would help us out is if you're listening on Spotify, especially if you enjoy it, leave us a review, leave us some stars there so maybe we can expand this out. If not, John and I will survive. We do this kind of as a fun thing anyway. So
yeah, I don't fixate over the listens. I remember the first time that I did the listens, I knew for a fact that it had to be wrong because it said we were at 0 and I had listened to it. So by definition, it wasn't at 0. And that was the point that I realized it wasn't worth monitoring the stats. It doesn't matter. So
yeah.
But hopefully everyone enjoyed this. Hopefully we'll get to some more drafts down the road.
Yeah. I mean, I really, I think we could do a WWE draft, right? Because WrestleMania is this weekend.
I will take your word for that.
I mean, they actually do drafts. It's kind of funny. They do drafts to the different shows in WWE. But anyway, anyone else excited for WrestleMania? No, just me.
I have nothing but respect for people that care about wrestling. I am just not one of those people.
And we'll convert you yet.
All right. We'll see. But anyway, let's close this out. And thank you everybody for listening. And my dog's still barking 2 hours later, so I should let him outside. But yeah, thanks everybody for listening. Bye.
See you guys.